Hi, I am Manikavel Arumugam. I am a project management trainer, consultant, and blogger. If you have not subscribed to this channel yet, I kindly request you to subscribe to this channel. I will be posting a lot of useful videos related to project management and PMP certification. Recently, I have posted a video on the process flow for planning process group, where I have covered in detail how the 24 processes within the planning process group interact and how they are all connecting with the integration management process called develop project management plan. So following that video, I got a lot of feedback and a lot of comments that they wanted to see a video for other process groups too. So I thought the next one I should focus is monitoring and controlling process group, because this is the second biggest process group. While planning process group has 24 processes, monitoring and controlling has 12 processes. So I have created this video where I will be focusing on the monitoring and controlling processes, where we have 12 processes and how they are interacting with each other and how they are interacting with some processes in executing or closing. We will try to see how they are all interacting and fitting together in a bigger picture. So this video is not about the details of individual processes, but it is more about looking at the overview, understanding all the monitoring and controlling process work from a bird's eye view. That's what I recommend everyone. Do it first before you go into the details. Now let's jump in. So you know that there are two processes that comes under monitoring and controlling process group, which are under the integration management. So integration management is something that binds together all the work that happens within the process group. So this is the same concept I have explained when I did for planning process group. I clearly said that the develop project management plan process is the one that binds together all the other 23 processes. So this is the concept you need to understand. The integration management is something that unifies, that coordinates, that brings them all together, that combines them all together. So always try to view the entire processes from the perspective of integration management. Now in this screen, I have shared you two processes that are under the monitoring and controlling process group. Right? For example, this monitor and control project work is a process in integration management. Perform integrated change control is another process within integration management. So we have two processes within the integration management under monitoring and controlling process group. And this process is an execution process, which is direct and manage project work, which is again a process that comes under execution, but under integration management. Now this video is all about how these three processes are going to interact and how these three processes are going to use the other monitoring and controlling processes to get the work done. So you can see here, there is a lot of interaction between these processes. Direct and manage project work will give inputs to monitor and control project work, to perform integrated change control, and these two are connected. So this is what you need to understand. Execution and monitoring and controlling processes are interlinked, and there will be a lot of work that happens across them. It goes from execution to monitoring and controlling, and back from monitoring and controlling to execution. Now let's go into the details, right? I'm going to go into the details now. This is the important section. I want you to watch till the end of this video so that you get a complete picture of monitoring and controlling. Now, the trigger always starts from execution, the direct and manage project work. So that's the important process. That's why I wanted to include the execution process in this video. Even though I wanted to talk about mainly about monitoring and controlling, the monitoring and controlling cannot exist if you don't have an execution process. There is no trigger from execution. there will be nothing happening in monitoring and controlling. So that's why I start this slide from the direct and manage project work. Now let's say during execution, what you do, you create deliverables. So once you have a deliverable, there could be multiple deliverables in a project. So every time you create a deliverable, so let us look at the deliverable. What you should do next? The next thing you need to do is do quality control. Go and check the deliverables, see whether they are meeting the acceptance criteria, whether they are as per our original scope baseline. Are they meeting the quality requirements? You need to verify that these deliverables are in a good condition. So who does this work in control quality? The quality control work is done by who? Is by your internal team. You may have an internal quality control team who does it. Basically, what technique they are using here? They are going to use a technique called inspection. Okay, inspection is what is used by your quality control team to inspect the deliverables, and what they do, they create verified deliverables. Basically, create means they just are comfortable with the deliverables, and then they say, oh, okay, we have verified these deliverables, we are comfortable, it is okay, you can go ahead. Now the process doesn't stop here. Now these verified deliverables has to be inspected and accepted by your customer, right? In control quality is only your internal check. That is not sufficient. Your customer also has to accept this product or deliverable. So where that work happens, it happens in a process called validate scope. The validate scope, again, inspection is done. The inspection is on what? Is on the verified deliverables. The deliverables which are already inspected by the quality control team and they have cleared already. Right? Only after they clear, it comes to the validate scope. And in the validate scope, the customer inspects, and what they do, they accept the deliverables. Once the deliverables are accepted, what you should do, you have to send it to the close project and then hand over to the customer. So you can see here, this is a flow that is related to deliverables, and it starts from execution, goes through monitoring and controlling, and then finally it finishes at the closing process. So this control quality is a monitoring and controlling process. This validate scope is a monitoring and controlling process. So both processes, what they do inspection. So inspection is the main tool or technique in both the processes. Okay. Now let's look at what are the other works done by monitoring and controlling processes. The execution process also generates work performance data. So during execution, you might be collecting a lot of data. The data could be related to a schedule, the data could be related to cost, the data could be related to quality, the data could be related to risk. So you might be collecting a lot of data in your project. So for example, today the activity so-and-so has started. Today, the activity of designing component B is completed. Today, I have spent $1,000 on purchasing a laptop. So all of these are data. And what we should do, the data itself doesn't give you much meaning. It doesn't give you any useful information. So the first thing what you need to do, get the data from execution and do an analysis. And where do we do this analysis? We do in the monitoring and controlling process group. And in which process? Now we will see which processes are going to do the analysis. Any data related to scope, okay? Any data related to scope will go to the processes control scope and validate scope. Any data related to scope will go to control scope and validate scope. Now what the work is done here, the control scope looks at the data given to it. It does the analysis. So what kind of analysis is done? You might be doing the variance analysis. So what is a variance analysis? It is trying to find out what is the difference between my plan versus what I am actually delivering. Comparing with your scope baseline and your actual performance. So what kind of information you might get? You might get an information saying that, oh, we are doing some gold plating. We are doing something more than what is written in the scope baseline. Now that is an information you are getting. Now what you should do? Probably you do a trend analysis. Is it a one-off thing or is it regularly happening? If you find this is regularly happening, probably you want to look at, should I go into the root cause analysis? Right? And then probably you may have to look at all these analysis and the information that generates, it has to be passed on. So what these processes, the monitoring and controlling processes in the 9 knowledge areas, leave alone the integration, I will come to the integration later. The 9 knowledge areas, they look at the data, they analyze the data, and then they produce information which would be useful for decision making. Now the data related to scope is sent to either control scope or validate scope, depending on what exactly the data talks about. Any data that is related to schedule, a starting of an activity or finishing of an activity, or how much duration an activity has taken, right? All these goes to control schedule. So this is the process that looks at what is your schedule baseline and how actually you are delivering the work. Are you meeting the schedule baseline? If the schedule baseline states activity A should take 10 days, are you actually taking 10 days or not? If you're not taking 10 days, are you taking lesser or are you taking more? Now this analysis has to happen. Again, you will look at variance analysis. What is my schedule baseline and what actually I'm delivering? What is the variance? How many days I'm behind the schedule? Or how much percentage of work I'm behind the schedule? So I need to look at the variance. And then I need to look at the trend. Is my schedule performance improving or is my schedule performance deteriorating? If I see some major concerns, if my variances are beyond the variance control threshold, then probably I need to look at the root cause analysis. And as part of control schedule, I will also be doing the forecasts. When the project is likely to complete based on the current status. So you will be generating information again. Similarly, there will be a data related to costs. It will be analyzed in control costs. They will generate work performance information. There will be data related to quality. Once again, it will be sent to control quality process and then it will send work performance information. There will be data related to resources. Once again, analysis information. Data related to monitor communications. Data related to risks. Data related to procurements. Data related to stakeholders. So you can see almost all the processes are doing exactly the same kind of work. Of course, the information inside will be different. One will be related to time, one will be related to cost, one will be related to risk, one will be related to quality. But you look at the tools and techniques in all these processes, they all will look very similar. It could be like variance analysis, it could be like trend analysis, it may be alternatives analysis, it may be cost benefit analysis, it may be earned value analysis. They are more or less the same kind of tools and techniques. Yeah, earned value analysis is more or less, it may not be applicable in all the processes, except maybe in schedule or cost or the overall monitoring. But other than that, the other tools and techniques almost like you can use in most of the processes. You will also do something like reserve analysis, right? So you need to look at what kind of analysis needs to be done. So don't try to focus on each and every process. Try to look at all the processes together. Then you will get a very good information about how all these processes are very, very similar. Okay. So this is one major work. Now, all these information, right? There are information coming from scope management knowledge area. There is information coming from schedule management knowledge area. There is information coming from cost management knowledge area. What should happen to all these? Of course, all of this goes to the integration management, where it has a overall project control process, which is called monitor and control project work. So now you can see here the hub of the activity. You can see here execution is a kind of hub of activity. It is the main point from which the data is thrown. And again, it all comes back to the integration. This is where everything comes back and assembles. This is only a route in between. Okay, you can see here the connection between the execution integration process and the monitoring and controlling integration process. Even though there is a route in between, but they are all connected. I send data from here, and then the information reaches the monitor and control project work. Now, what does this monitor and control project work does? They prepare work performance reports, which are more of like in a presentable format to be presented to the stakeholders. The next step, what happens to the work performance reports? Once I create the work performance reports, these work performance reports has to go to manage communications process. So remember, any communication from the project should always go through the managed communications process. It can be work performance reports, it could be quality reports, it could be risk report, it could be a change log, it could be a lessons learned register. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you want to communicate, you need to send that information or you need to send that report to manage communications process. So that is the only process authorized to distribute information or reports from the project. So even though monitor and control project work generates the work performance reports, they cannot distribute it. It should be distributed by manage communications process, the output of which is called project communications. Now, this is the second work done by the monitoring and controlling process. What is the first one? The first one we discussed about the deliverables. The second one is the analysis of the work performance data. Now, let's move on to the third work that is mainly done by the monitoring and controlling processes. I have just grayed out the arrows because it might look very, very clumsy with more and more arrows I'm going to add. So I have just grayed out so that it doesn't disturb the topic we are going to discuss next. Okay. Now, every monitoring and controlling process is capable of generating a change request. For example, I look at the data related to scope and I do the analysis in control scope. Now I find that there is something wrong. Maybe like, oh, I have missed some scope in the when I defined the scope or when I created the work breakdown structure, I have missed a scope. So I might initiate a change request now to add this particular item to my scope baseline. So that could be a change request. There could be a change request from validate scope, where you might find that the inspection process is not going smoothly. So you want to change the inspection process. That could lead to a change request. You can have a change request from control schedule. When you see that the project is not going according to the schedule, you are falling behind by too much, probably you want to look at some techniques like schedule compression. Then probably that could initiate some change requests. Similarly, every monitoring and controlling processes the output you will get a change request. Control cost, the output is change request. Control quality, control resources, monitor communications, monitor risks, control procurements, monitor stakeholder engagement. And even the overall project control process, right? The monitor and control project work, this also can generate a change request. Not only that, the execution process, that also can generate a change request. So you can see here every process within the monitoring and controlling process except one, okay, which we will see later. There is one process which we have not covered yet. Other than that, every other process can potentially generate a change request. And of course, there will be some processes in planning, some processes in initiating, some other processes in executing. They also might be initiating change requests. It doesn't really matter. Now we are discussing only monitoring and controlling. In my opinion, you can think that the change request can be initiated by any process. The change request can be initiated by any stakeholder or any team member. So more or less the change request could be an output from any process. But typically when you look at the monitoring and controlling process, they are an output from each process. Now, if I receive a change request, what should I do? That is the next question, right? Yeah, these processes are generating change requests. What should I do next? The next thing is I need to send it to a process called perform integrated change control. Once again, this is a process that belongs to integration management and within the monitoring and controlling process group. Once again, you can see here the entire hub of activity happens towards the integration management knowledge area. Earlier we saw the work performance information, everything is towards the monitor and control project work, which is an integration management process. Similarly, now if you look at change requests, they are all focused on perform integrated change control process. Now what happens in perform integrated change control process? Probably when a change request is initiated, you want to document it. That means you need to have it in proper written format. Then probably you want to enter it into a change log. Then maybe you want to do an impact analysis. Then probably you want to look at the various options available. And then you will be submitting these things to the change control board, CCB, right? What you are submitting the change request, you are submitting your impact analysis report, you are submitting the options available, you are submitting your recommendation or suggestion to the board members. Now, what does the CCB does? It looks at the change request, it looks at the impact analysis, it looks at how it affects the organization, right? How much time it might delay the project, or how much time additionally needed, how much more money is needed, what are the new risks involved in doing this additional work, right? All these the board members will review, and once they review, of course they will come to a decision whether to approve the change request or reject the change request, or should we defer the change request. Okay, of course we can discuss about the change control process itself in some other video, but as of now understand that all the change requests are analyzed or reviewed within the perform integrated change control process, and it generates what we call it as approved change requests. Okay, so change requests are generated by a lot of processes. They all come as an input to only one process, that is perform integrated change control. And the review and analysis and the decision making process happens within perform integrated change control, and then approved change requests are an output. Now, what happens to the approved change requests? Yes, the change requests are approved. What should I do next? It should go as an input back to execution, right? You can see here, it goes back as an input, right? The change request came as an input to perform integrated change control. Once the change requests are approved, it goes back and as an input to direct and manage project work. Not only to this process, it also goes back as an input to control procurements. Why? This is the process in which you inspect the work done by your sellers. Right? There is an inspection involved and you want to have the latest change request so that you can verify the deliverables given by your sellers. Similarly, it also goes, the approved change request goes as an input to to control quality. Okay, it's not change request. Okay, it's just an overlap. It's actually the approved change request goes back as an input to control quality. So approved change requests are an input to three processes, that is direct and managed project work, control quality, and control procurements. Right, that completes the cycle of change requests. Now that is the third work done mainly in the monitoring and controlling process group. Now let's move to the next one, where the control schedule and control cost processes, they generate the forecasts. Okay, these are the two special outputs from these two processes. When you monitor the schedule, finally you will give an output called schedule forecast. Similarly, the cost management process will also give the cost forecast as an output. Though these might be more or less considered as an information, you could think of these as a special version of work performance information. Okay, so that's it. It's a special form of information. After the analysis, you basically get work performance information, schedule forecast, and cost forecast. And of course, another special work that is done in control procurements, which is not done in any other knowledge area, is to close the procurements. We don't have a separate process where we try to close the seller's work. So you monitor the procurements or monitor the performance of the seller, and then you continuously be in touch with the seller about the deliverables he is delivering, and inspection, audits, everything. And finally, once his work is completed, and the closure of the procurements should also happen within this process. Okay, so closed procurements is something that is special for control procurements. Right, that brings us to the end of our understanding of the monitoring and controlling process group. Now I'm going to summarize what exactly we have discussed in the monitoring and controlling process group. The first one, we spoke about inspection of deliverables, where the execution process generates the deliverables, it goes to control quality, it goes to validate scope, and finally it gets handed over to the customer in closed project. We also looked at the analysis of work performance data. Once again, the execution process triggers the work performance data. It is analyzed in each of the monitoring and controlling process. It generates the information. The information goes as an input to the overall project control process, and it generates the work performance reports. The work performance reports are distributed to the stakeholders through the managed communications process. Managed communications process is an executing process. Okay, you need to, I'm just showing the interrelationship here. The processing of change requests. Wherever the change requests are initiated in the project, it all has to come as an input to perform integrated change control. That's where the change requests are processed and the decision is made whether to approve the change request or reject the change requests. And finally, the closing of procurements. Once again, the closing of procurements is part of the monitoring and controlling process group. So these are the main work that happens in monitoring and controlling process group. So we have come to the end of the video. If you do have any specific doubts, or if you do have any kind of confusions about how to go about monitoring and controlling process group, I suggest you to leave a comment in the video. If you like this video, I kindly request you to give a thumbs up and also leave a comment saying how did you feel about the video, and in future what kind of video should I produce. Did you like this kind of visual representation of how we look at the various process groups or various knowledge areas? Does this give you a better understanding of the overview of the PMP exam content? Do you feel much better now? Okay, please give the feedback. That would help me to produce more useful videos. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I hope you would come back to this channel. If you have not subscribed, I kindly request you to subscribe and click the bell icon so that you will be given the notification whenever I post new videos. Okay, thank you very much. See you soon in some other video. Until then, bye bye.